So debrief, yeah. So starting with room number one, let's go from the top. So room number one, we had Alice, David, Ran, Rob, and Solange. Did you guys manage to select someone to be the spokesperson? Did you have enough time to do that? Or anyone would like to volunteer to share key themes or key topics that came up in the discussion?
I think Nat, I was volunteered.
You're volunteering. Go for it. Go ahead.
We managed to cover two questions across that whole paragraph. I think the consensus about the first one in terms of what we agreed or disagreed with was that by the time we read through the whole paragraph and worked through each sentence, we thought it might be actually better to read it backwards and go last sentence to the first, and it gave us a much better picture of the different statements that were made there from a positive framing rather than a more challenging or a negative framing. Things that we did agree with were, yes, IT roles are highly valuable, and that we definitely want to encourage people to bring their entire selves to work. Challenging statements for us were around the fact that it's a digital revolution. We'd rather think we're evolving, because I think to our conversation, a revolution sort of is finite, whereas an evolution is an ongoing learning experience. And that we didn't probably agree that there was a significant lack of appreciation for IT professionals. In the group, we all had a collective experience that appreciation and respect was in place and people really were valued. So we didn't quite align with that thinking. I think the only other part of our conversation quickly was around how we might be attracting and retaining high quality talent. And we did start that conversation before we got dragged in back here. And a couple of things that came up were around flexibility and allowing people to have growth, and that's not just non-financial aspects that provide people satisfaction and fulfillment at work. Skip meetings was one of the other items that were touched on, where leaders reach out more further into the organization and try and understand everybody that's working in the team beyond just their initial one level down. And I think authentic leadership and allowing people to flourish in a trusted environment where they could make decisions and actually go after solving problems because it's their skill set, with the leader be allowing them to flourish by removing roadblocks. So I think that sort of summarizes it. Did I miss anything, team?
Silence means, I guess, a yes. You did a good job, Ren. I think. Beautiful summary. Thanks so much. And you might be pleased to know that that kind of bit negative language, which I think was a result of my frustration, indignation back in the days, it's dropped. It's no longer on version 2.0. Okay, you might be happy to know that. But thanks so much for your summary and feedback from everyone. Great. So let's move on. Rule number 2. Alex, Barry, Michael, Peter, and Rene. So who is the spokesperson for rule number 2?
I think I'm the one that took some notes, so it'll be me.
Thanks, Michael.
So we jumped in with mainly looking. Well, we started with what bits do we disagree with, which was quite interesting, and that came up. I think it was Renee that started off with. We don't want to leave our lack of appreciation behind. We want to embrace it and learn from it, and use it as a real driving force use it as a reminder to continue appreciating people, to show that appreciation. But I took a very short version of what Barry said, which I think basically summarizes as contractors are people too. As we talked about, especially when a third party is hired to fulfill a job, we often don't think about the people that are there, where they're going, no, we contracted your company for this. So recognizing, like, bringing the humanity back and going, actually, there's a person here delivering that request. And then Peter was talking a bit about focusing on looking forward and providing the culture and the growth opportunities in order to overcome the competitive market and to attract and retain talent. as we moved a bit further through the statement there. And then the question was raised, and unfortunately we came back here before we had a chance to start answering it, but I think it was going to go on for at least another 20 minutes anyway, was what about those individuals that aren't bright? Are we excluding them? And we ended up back here. So we didn't actually get to discuss that one, but it was a fantastic question.
Good point. I'd love to see this conversation continue in the LinkedIn group. By the way, I'll mention later that in between events, so we're having these events once a month in between, we definitely can continue the conversation, or perhaps we decide another platform, perhaps. But interesting to hear that the lack of appreciation, maybe, and even the contractors are people. It's been a while since I left IT, and that is still happening. So sad, but it's good that came up in the discussion. So thanks, Michael, for your summary. Again, just conscious of time. It looks like we'll go a few minutes over time. So if you need to excuse yourself at 8:30 on the dot, I totally appreciate, because it's late. But we'll try to keep short. Rule number 3, we had Adriana, Ben, Jack, and Juan Gomez. So who would like to step up and provide us a summary?
Yeah, so I probably overdid it with the conversation, so I got volunteered to be the leader. Didn't actually see anything really wrong with what's put up. I guess one of the angles that was discussed is that we need to recognize that everyone is their own bundle of uniqueness, right? Everyone has their own needs, their own accommodations that are required. It could be anything from, I need to pick up the kids from school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, through to, having a light over my desk is just going to distract the living heck out of me, right? But in order for that to come out, you have to have the psychological safety, you have to have the high degrees of trust, okay? Which feeds into what's being said. Likewise, which is something that builds on the previous team's observation about, well, what about the people that maybe aren't, the maths geniuses and that sort of stuff? That all feeds into it, right? Because everybody thinks and learns differently, right? Some people think and learn differently much more than others. But what the current socio-political hierarchies and the gentrification of the workplace has actually done is it's excluded particularly the non-conformist people. Now, these are the people that really do think in very weird ways that lead to really innovative outcomes, right? And we're basically, everything from the hiring process through to the way we've changed physical work environments, we've driven those people out of IT, right? We all want the geniuses who are also going to be the slick, gift of the gab types, right? And all that sort of stuff. So again, it comes down to revolving around the needs of each and every individual. The interesting thing is within the group, after we had started to have this discussion, and I mentioned that, there are a large number of people that, when people are talking about football, they are pretending to go through the motions that they are interested. They'll have scripts about, whatever, right? When really it bores the living crap out of them. Now, the interesting thing from that was by the end of the call, every single person on the call actually came up and said, actually, I've never really said anything, but I really don't like footy. I'm following a team because it's expected of me, right? So we have 100% hit rate, okay? As far as psychological safety is concerned within that group, where people are able to disclose that actually, yeah, I'm a heathen. I don't follow football, which I guess is a really good example of that. I'll say this, it's quite clear with all the people within that group, they're exactly the sorts of people that should be in leadership positions as far as I'm concerned, because I've got that picture that it's not coming from authority to drive things down. It's about understanding the catalyzers and the enablers within the team. So I don't talk about managers and leaders, I talk catalyzers and enablers, and these guys get it, right? So but yeah, that was the only thing is I guess a recognition of the uniqueness of individuals, and a new individual comes into your team, everything's going to change. It should change, right? It should accommodate and meld together as one. Any member of the team, have I missed anything? And please let me know if I've misrepresented anything as well by accident.
I think you did a great job, Jack. And I might say completely random, but side note, but I feel compelled to share. I met Jack a while ago, a few years ago, was a meetup, and the topic I'm pretty sure was diversity in tech, but there was this flavor of neurodiversity. And yeah, being kind of in touch since then. I highly recommend to follow Jack. He published a really interesting article recently. And you'll be pleased, Jack, to know that we included, diversity was not in the original manifesto, but it will be there. And yeah, so something for you to be aware. Next breakout room we had, so thanks again, Jack. We had number 4, Alastair, Anthony, Nabil, Simon, and Zach.
I can go if everybody else is clearly not going to.
I just muted myself and just Alistair, you go for it, mate.
Long pause. I'll do half, you can do half. We spoke about quite a few same things that other people have raised. We did have a bit of a discussion around the language used. So touching on Barry's point about contractors, the term human resources and the change to now people and culture, assuming the language change is reflected in the behavioural change. I think when you're referring to people as resources, you're setting the wrong mood from that outset. So everybody's spoken about the importance of being an individual, and being classified as a resource, is not providing that from the outset. So I think there's a bit of a kind of change in that, some of that language required. We then sort of spoke more about the need to be free to talk about what motivates you. Having emotions. Zach, kind of articulated that far better than I'm going to, but you get involved in an organisation and a job, which is, a large part of your waking life, and it should be an emotional attachment. There should be an emotional driver for all of that. You can go and earn the same money or more somewhere else, probably doing something that you're not as interested in, but the reason that people will do well and enjoy, and then, that cycle will kind of feed itself, is because the right emotions are able to come out in that job, whether that's enjoyment, satisfaction, pride, whatever else it is. If the wrong emotions come out, then it's a vicious circle, going in the opposite direction, and people will leave. So I think that's, very, very important. We then kind of spoke a little bit about the kind of masculinity, and, which is something that's maybe playing out just now with some of the scenes on the TV, but I think men don't tend to be comfortable talking about their feelings. And I kind of raised the question as to whether female-led organisations who do tend to outperform male-led organisations a lot of time, is that because there is more of a culture where you can talk about your feelings and you can really be yourself and bring that into the workplace openly without fear of, maybe not reprisal, but people sniggering or taking the mickey out of you because you've admitted to something that's seen as weak. And look, to Jack's point, I think a lot of people probably say that they do like AFL because A, there's an expectation, but B, that's a masculine thing to do, or that's one of the lads or one of the team, for the wrong kind of reasons. And I've tried to get into it, and not being born here, I think probably a bit of a different, it's a bit different, but, everybody I talk to, football will come up at some point, and there's an expectation they can contribute to that conversation. It's funny when you talk to certain people, there's the same types of conversations, the same types of topics, and they do tend to be very male or female. So I think there's that wider social expectation that comes into play in the workforce, and we maybe need to kind of think about breaking that down from the inside out. If anybody wants to add anything to that ramble, please.
That's all right, mate. You did well. Actually, Nabil said some really cool things as well too, which I want to call out. So, and it was really good listening to him. So we're sort of saying things about, we can do things that we can do, or we should do things that we should do. Like
Oh, you were fine before.
You were fine.
Fine before.
My earbuds picked up the conversation. So yeah, so he was talking about that. That was really, really interesting. Zach obviously was just a rock star and talking about just how how humanity is important and putting people first. I was sort of talking about that as well. So how it's a real privilege to lead people, and just really focusing on them as people is probably the most important thing we can do as leaders. I think it's not only a privilege, but it's certainly something that I personally take very much to heart, that when people go home, they need to go home as better people, right? You need to not just wear them out at work. You actually empower them and send them home happy. So that's the focus. There's also, I will say too, there is a really good IT crowd show that actually has IT people actually pretending to like football. You should watch it, because I've watched it. I don't like football either. I like the round ball football, but I don't like the other football. But there's a IT crowd. Watch it. Just plugging it.
That's a great episode.
That's a clip I just put in the yeah. That's
being a woman and managed to get away, but it's funny to hear you guys saying that as well. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks Simon, thanks Alistair, great summaries as well. I could comment, but again we'll move on. Rule number 5, we had Lisa, Rich and Alexander. So how did you go, guys? Key themes that came up for you?
So I think I'm a volunteer, but we had a lot of different discussions. But one of the things that we probably talked about the most was trust. And so I think it started with, we were talking about, it's not just about teamwork and bringing teams together. It's about establishing trust. And then I was talking about some of the insight that we sort of recently gained at some survey information we were looking at, where we found 80%, or it was a big number, 90% of our customers trust us, but 12% of our employees trusted leadership, which I was really surprised about those stats. I would have thought it was kind of the other way around, but anyway. And when we dug into why, on the employee side, it was because the main thing was that they weren't getting a lot of, I guess, time from leaders, and therefore they didn't really understand what was going on. And that's where that lack of trust sort of came in. And so we sort of more had a conversation around, in terms of being mindful about how you build trust, and particularly in the environments we all operate in, where the teams are coming from, different organizations, and some of them are, someone mentioned it about contractors, and there's, the customer, and there's all sorts of walks of life coming together. How do you build trust in those environments? So we just sort of had an interesting discussion about that, about building trust and about establishing personal connections with people to be able to build trust. So no, that's it. Excellent. Anyone else wants to add anything, they can.
Thanks, Lisa. Rich, any additional comments or thoughts? Because I know you are a critical thinker as well.
Yeah, the conversation also went to, I guess, the dynamics between what makes a healthy, I guess, system. So we were chatting about the topic of how trust, to Lisa's point, becomes the base foundation upon which you then build the ways of working in a team. And to the point around what were we proud of, there was some anecdotal evidence to suggest that when you get in the trenches and you understand what your team's doing, what their values are and what's important to them, and then matching that to the North Star, if you like, of the strategic objective of the business, if that resonates, then that forms a pretty indelible link that can help drive the whole team forward. And that none of that is really possible without being mindful and being empathetic and being present with what matters to the people in your team. So yeah, as leaders, I think we've got a big responsibility to foster that, and so that can become sort of the DNA of the business, if you like, because without it, the fabric can come apart. So yeah.
I feel like giving you a F5, Rich. Thank you. I can see some people dropping off, and I'm very conscious of time, trying to, keep track, be challenging. So just a couple of minutes for those who are still hanging. Thanks so much for your patience. Real quick, upcoming events. We have the plans to run this event once a month. So we'll go to the 10 declarations, so 9 declarations to go. You can see the date on the screen, and will be all available on Eventbrite. We're looking for sponsors. So if you know an organization who is purpose-driven and is keen to sponsor us, let us know, because right now I'm sponsoring the Mindful CIO with my own business, which is my executive coaching and mindfulness mentoring for leaders in tech. But if you know some organization of might be keen to be involved with us, let us know. We have the working group, as Michael mentioned. Next event is on the 20th of October, so please save the date if you feel like you got value from today. And after today, you receive an invitation to join our LinkedIn group, which is invitation only, so we can continue the discussion between events. We will share in a sec the link to our feedback survey, and if you need to dash off, that's fine. I'll send you via LinkedIn as well. It'll be good to hear from you. What do you think we could do better in the next event? So if you can take 2 minutes, it's only 3 questions, so it's really sharp. 4 questions actually. We really appreciate. And that's it. So thank you. I hope you got value from today. And why I'm still showing on the screen, I like to see your faces back. That's okay, it's probably because I'm talking. So thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for your time. And as I said, we'll be here for a few more minutes for those who can afford another few, perhaps 5 minutes or so, to continue the conversation. And yeah, I hope you got some value, and hopefully see you next month if you can make it. Yes, the feedback survey, Michael, is Michael still with us, or he had to dash off?
I pasted it in there before, and I'll do it again. It's getting lost in everyone saying thank you and goodbye.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, thank you all.
So yeah, so thank you, and if you want to hang around, please do. Otherwise, see you next month.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you. Well done, Natalie.
Have a lovely
Thank you.
evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. I do have to go, unfortunately. Bye.
Good.